James. Are there any discussion amongst the Wildlife Committee?
Yeah, I've got one more question. If the numbers on the graph stay the same next year, are you in a position to say that that the changing of that definition is what caused it?
I would be very confident in saying that that is what moved it. Yes.
Anyone else? Any comments from the public? Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commission. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dan Gibbs. I'm the Bear Management Program Leader, and I'm going to take a few minutes, 2 slides real quickly to review what John Mike went over with you last month regarding the harvest, and then the one small change that we have for this year that really isn't a change, and I'll explain that here in just a minute for you. So, as you can see, the green represents the total harvest, and we harvested 433 bears this year, which was about a dozen bears below our 3-year average, and that's compared to 551 last year, which would have been the 3rd highest harvest on record. So we're basically getting these fluctuations of 120 bears per year in our harvest, which is pretty significant. But when you consider the fluctuations that we've had in the last few years with our fall mast and acorns and beech nuts and things such as that, it really makes sense, because years when we have low food availability, the bears are much more active and more apt to be harvested. Regarding manner and means, the gun it still rules as far as the weapon of choice, with 84% of bears being taken with a gun, and also 80% of the bears are taken with the use of hounds. So our hound hunters are very efficient, and that's a good thing when you consider where the bears are. It's hard to get to them as still hunters, so that's a very important part of our bear management program, our houndsmen. So for those of you in the commission that aren't aware of this, and I don't know why the new ones would be, but we're in the process of a 2 to 3 year study to estimate the bear numbers in Tennessee, and the states of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia are also a part of this study as well. So when we finish this up in 2 years, we're going to have a density estimate for the Southern Appalachian Mountains that covers 4 states and around 14 million acres. So, to my knowledge, this will be the largest study that's been done like this for bears, and it's going to be a game changer for us here in Tennessee, and I believe it's going to be the catalyst to some significant changes in our bear management program, but we have to get that information before we can make those changes. So really there are no recommended changes this year, other than this chart being included in the proclamation, and all this chart is doing is setting permanent dates. These are the same dates and same season lengths that we've had for at least the last 3 seasons. And just to make things simpler for us, we would prefer to have this chart and proclamation. So in any given year that we don't have a change, we don't have to come before you and with season dates and things like that. So I know one of the questions that was asked, does this change length of season, timing, or anything? And as you can see, if you look at the second segment there or segment 1 for zone 2, it says 7 consecutive days beginning the first Monday after the 4th Saturday in September. And some of these get pretty wordy, and that's the way you have to do it, unfortunately, to get it to fall right. But basically, there's not going to be any loss in days or season length, and the timing is going to be the same for all these hunts, as well as training. So that's our recommendation, is to insert this chart into our proclamation. And I know I looked at the tape, and there were several questions after John finished with this last month, and information has been provided to individual commissioners, and I think we've got most of those answered, but we'll take time right now. If any of you have any more questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Dan.
Dan, we talked about, if you could bring that chart back up for us all to see.
Okay.
You know, we're starting this hunt on this first Monday, and we talked about kids being in school on this first Monday versus having it on the weekend. I mean, I'm all for, you know, one of my big things is I want kids involved in the outdoors at every opportunity chance that we can. And starting this hunt on the Monday, is there any way that we could back up to the weekend?
Let me go to a slide here, and I'll just use the North Cherokee as an example. I could pull up the South Cherokee just as easy. So the issue you get into with, I'm going to leave it like this just for a second, then I'll pull it up larger for you. Basically, what we get into, Commissioner Baker, is that, you have to pardon me, these are out of order. Forgive me, let me just go ahead and pull this one up here. These are a little bit out of order, but basically, the North Cherokee is open, same as statewide on deer seasons, okay? So this is the month of October, December, November. And if I pulled the bear seasons out and just showed the deer seasons, all three calendars would be completely full. If deer season is open every day, all three months. And traditionally, the bear hunters have preferred to have their days away from the really active time for the deer hunters, which, as you can see in this chart, would be the muzzleloader and gun season, the entire muzzleloader and the first 9 days of gun season. So that puts us opening bear seasons on Mondays on the North Cherokee. And the reason that we do that is to reduce that conflict. Now, that's not to say that we can't have bear open on a Saturday with deer. However, I feel like that we really need to have some good conversations with those hunting groups up there and also in the South Cherokee to make sure they understand all the costs and benefits related to that. Yes, you get the kids out there if you have that hunt on Saturday, but there's also going to be gun hunters out. Now, if you get up into October, and that may be the hunt you're referring to, that first 5-day hunt, the issue in the north end in October is going to be all of your non-consumptive users, which the Forest Service is mandated to manage those folks as well. Your leaf lookers, your campers, your hikers, your picnickers, all those folks. And lots of conflicts arise with hound hunting that time of year on the weekends in the North Cherokee. So at the Forest Service request, we've really tried to stay away from that. Now, once again, that doesn't mean we can't have that conversation, but there's a lot of cost associated with it. So to answer your question, I think as we move forward with this study and we get all this information, we may find to harvest the number of animals that we want to harvest, we may have to bite that bullet and have some of these hunts on weekends. Time will tell.
I'll make a proclamation, amendment to this proclamation in a few minutes. But I just think, you know, if I decide I want to go grouse hunting while somebody's out there deer hunting, we could have that's two different user groups that are going to be there. I mean, that's just a conflict that's going to happen. And I don't think that we can, you know, go around and mitigate exactly when somebody's going to be doing something, somebody's going to be doing something else all the time.
Well, I called Hugh Lamb, who's the president of the Tennessee Bear Hunters Association, and he specifically said that they did not want to hunt on Saturday on that hunt. And I asked him to send me a letter saying so, and he did not do that. But I did call him and ask him. And Mary Miller is here with the Forest Service as well, so if she wants to comment, she can. But after seeing the tape, I did call Hugh Lamb and ask him about that very specific question.
Well, I've listened to this man right over here that's been to about every bear meeting we've had. He's one of the main ones that wants to bring the kids to here.
Sure. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay. So like I said, as I said, we talk to the bear hunters regularly on these dates, and I understand the desire to get out there on Saturday, but bear hunting seasons are complicated, and the hunters just many times it's just not worth the sacrifice to have the two overlap, the deer and the hound hunting. The hound hunters are concerned about deer hunters shooting their dogs. The deer hunters are concerned about the dogs running deer, and just to be quite frankly, they just don't get along with each other. And it's been easier over the years to keep them separated. And as I said, we may be reaching the point we can't do that any longer. But as an agency, and the Forest Service, I believe, would agree, we prefer to have those numbers from that survey in our back pocket to justify any changes that we make going forward with bear seasons.
Thank you, Dan.
I got a quick question, please, sir. Dan, I'm not familiar, I plead ignorance on the Cherokee and the federal lands over there. Do the hunters have to have a WMA permit to hunt?
Yes, yes.
Do the hikers and campers have to have one to be on the property?
No, sir. But once again, we're not the landowner.
But we're managing the land.
Yes, sir. A cooperative agreement.
Commissioner Baker, do you have any further comment?
You don't want to change the number of days of the season, do you?
Pardon?
The number of days who sets the number of days? Is there? If we wanted to add the first, if we wanted to go like the say the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th, and put 2 more days in October so that those kids have an opportunity to hunt that Saturday and that Sunday of that first season. When it's a little bit warmer out and it's not as near as cold, because I've bear hunted in October, and I've bear hunted in December, and I've done that November hunt before when I've been from the top of Shady to the top of Iron Mountain and back in the same day, and it was 20 degrees when we started and 14 when we got back, and I had ice froze all over my beard and at the time. There's not a lot of kids can enjoy that, but I think we sure could add 2 days to that October hunt. It'd be a good opportunity to at least let those kids get out there and enjoy the outdoors with their parents.
Well, you're talking about two different things now. You're talking about moving an open day from Monday to Saturday to adding 2 days to the season. And the recommendation, my preference is that you not change it at all. But if you were going to change it, I would prefer to see it run the same 5 days as it is now, not 7. Just like I said, we're wanting to stay consistent throughout this study and not be adding days. And 2 days in October can be pretty significant to your harvest, especially in your female.
Any other discussion from the committee? Commissioner Stroud?
Just one question, Dan. What's our population of our bear? What's our bear
As I
population?
said, the number we put out there is around 6,000, but I believe when we get this study done, it's going to come in much higher than that. For years, there's never really been a good way to estimate bears, and now this new technology utilizing DNA, we're going to have a pretty good estimate. I think there's going to be some eyebrows raised once we get that.
So the harvest falling doesn't alarm you at all?
No, sir, not when you look at that 10-year trend. Like I said, 100 bears from one year to the next, with mass being such a huge factor. And also, the area that Harold Robertson hunts there in Zone 2, they're so keyed into what's going on in the Smoky Mountains National Park. If there's plenty of food in the park, their harvest is down. If there's not much food, they harvest a lot of bears. So food availability is very significant in what your harvest is going to be.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a clarifying question from your earlier conversation. Did you say that this is the first year of a 3-year study on the population?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is
Tennessee,
year one?
Yeah, Tennessee, Georgia, and South Carolina, we are setting our snares we're doing them right now, and we'll be getting our data this summer, and then North Carolina will be getting its data next summer. Now, whether or not we have all the final numbers by that following spring, that depends on the lab and how quickly they can get us the returns back on the DNA. So, and I'm not very optimistic, to be quite honest, because the last time we sent stuff, they rushed it for us and told us not to get used to that happening, and we're probably going to have 3 times the number of samples this time around than what we had the first time. So it takes time, but as I said, you know, the Forest Service and the agency have been in conversation. We've talked with the bear hunters a little bit, not a lot yet, and everybody knows that this study is probably going to change how we do things. It's just we got to get that data.
Thank you.
Any other discussion from the committee?
I apologize for being hoarse. I don't know what's happened. I was told there might be some consideration given to opening the archery season for bear on all of Cumberland Plateau. Was there any thought given to that?
It's already open. Yeah, it'll be zone 4. It's open the first 4 weeks to archery hunting, but we're not going to add any area to that if that's what you're asking. It's the same area that was open last year.
Any other discussion from the committee? How about from the public, please? Thank you.
Well, I'm Harold Robertson, Vice President of Tennessee Bear Hunters Association. I think we need to wait until we get the information so we know what we're doing. Yeah, I'd like to see the Saturdays, but let's wait a year or 2 so we can make sure we make the right decision. Because if you do in October, that's when a lot of bears are killed in October. You'll kill more sows than you will any other time. Your early season is when you kill all your sows. I'd rather not kill the sow bears. But I mean, I think we should leave it like it is.
So is your association
Yeah.
interested in the study and what it might
Yeah.
show?
Yes, sir. I'm interested in the study. Me and Dan have been talking about it, and we're going to keep up talking to each other and find out what goes on. I mean, we need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Any other comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Mary Miller with the U.S. Forest Service, Cherokee National Forest. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. We were just made aware of the proposal to start a hunt on a Saturday after the last commission meeting. So we haven't had a lot of time to discuss it. We've talked a little bit with Dan and some other folks with TWRA, but we too think it would be a good idea to give this some thought. We do have a lot of recreation users in the area. The Forest Service, the Cherokee National Forest, gets about 2 million visits, and just a tiny portion of that are from hunters and fishers. So there are a lot of campgrounds in the area. We have a lot of designated campgrounds, and they do pay for those campground spots. We often have problems with dogs running through the campgrounds. We do require people in the campgrounds to have their dogs on leashes. And so when you have a lot of dogs running through that are not on leashes, it can create an issue. So I would prefer that we take a look at this with you all, take a look at the study, and come up with a really good way of doing this. I'm all for getting kids in the woods, believe me. I'm all about it. But I want to make sure we do it in the right way, and we do it along with all of our recreation staff. I have not had any discussion with them about this, and it could impact them. The other thing about the north end in particular, there's a lot of private land interspersed on the north end of the forest with the Cherokee National Forest, and we do get a lot of complaints from adjacent landowners with dogs running through their property. So just something I'd like for us all to sit down with the bear hunters and everybody else and talk about.
Thank you, Ms. Speller. Any other comments? Any further discussion in the committee? Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Joyce
I'd like to
Sweeney will be
recognize
coming up
Joyce
now.
Sweeney. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Commissioners. I come forward to you today to present on the matter of wild turkeys. Last time we met together, we went over the harvest details, and then there were some direction as to explore the implications that might follow if we raise the daily bag limit from 1 bird per day to 2 birds per day during the spring harvests. And so I'm going to go into detail about that. And then there were also some questions regarding fall season, so we'll touch on that just very briefly. But just to kind of set the stage, since we last met, the conclusion of the 2017 spring season happened, and our preliminary numbers show that we harvested 33,141 turkeys this past few months, and that is up a couple thousand from 2016. So I don't have a dot up there at the end of that line graph, but it would just be another notch above the one that's there. Also, we went over, and just briefly I'll touch on fall. Last season setting a year ago, it was decided to lower the fall bag limits, and those bag limits are set on a per county basis. And since hens are taken in the fall, our objective with the lowering of the bag limit for the fall season was to reduce hen take. And so our total harvest dropped. Last year, we harvested 1,094 turkeys during the fall, which was 668 birds under last year. And just to remind you, I believe it was 44%. There was a 44% reduction in the take of hens. And so our intended consequence of that regulation change was indeed observed. So now we'll go into the details and then possible implications of changing our current regulation from allowing hunters to harvest 1 bird per day during the spring season to 2 birds per day. The possible impacts could be of a biological nature. It could be to our turkey population. What would this regulation change do in regard to our population? And what would this regulation change do to our research project that we have going on now? We've invested a lot of time, money, energy into this research project, which is really, at least from my perspective as your turkey program leader, just a key thing that's happening right now. So we'll look and see possible impacts to that. And also, you know, as our mission is to increase hunter satisfaction or maintain it. And so would we be indeed achieving that objective if we were to make this regulation change? So those are all the things I'm going to touch on. First off is biological impacts, population. And the main thing we look at, and the main thing we have to look at to make these decisions is our harvest. That's the data we collect. That's the data that we concentrate on. Now, there's 4 main things that influence these harvest numbers. And the most obvious one is the number of turkeys available. Like, what is our population abundance? The second thing is the number of hunters. You know, it's however, you know, the more hunters you have, the higher your harvest you would expect to be. Hunter effort. How much time can the hunter spend to take a turkey? And then the fourth thing is hunter efficiency. How well can hunters harvest a bird? You know, what weapon can they use? How early can they hunt? These are all the things that affect how efficient the hunters are at harvesting. And this is the key of the harvest that raising this daily bag limit would influence, because hunters would become more efficient at harvesting turkeys. And so the question is, how would the regulation change affect our population? Well, it would increase our harvest because hunters would become more efficient at taking birds. So would it affect it enough? Will increased hunter efficiency resulting from this regulation change have a large enough effect on our harvest to impact the turkey population? And I think that's what we're ultimately asking. And we don't really know. And the reason we don't really know is because we don't really understand what the current harvest impact, what the current harvest regulations and the current rate of our harvest, what the impact that is on our population. We went over those 4 things that make up harvest: hunter efficiency, hunter effort, hunter numbers, and the number of birds. Those are the 4 things. We need better numbers on all those things in order to really understand what our harvest is doing to our population. So I just want to tell you that if we knew the answer to this question, then we would know and have a good idea about what our regulation changes are doing in this regard. So I just underlined that so you wouldn't forget about that question. So what do we know? Well, we know that when spring mortality is more than 30 to 35% of the population, that there is danger of overharvest. And when we get to where we're overharvesting, the things that happen are that spring harvest declines and the proportion of adult males in the population declines. And why is that a problem? Well, because it decreases hunter satisfaction. Hunters hear less birds, and they're less successful when they go out to harvest a bird. And those are the main things that hunters derive satisfaction from, is hearing and seeing birds when they go out. And of course, hunters who harvest a bird are statistically more satisfied than hunters that don't harvest a bird. So, the big question is, are we anywhere near that? Could we be overharvesting during our spring season? Is it possible? We don't know, but it's in the realm of possibility. There's been recent research in other states, and the spring mortality has been measured between 35 to 40%. Now, I will couch that spring mortality and spring harvest are 2 different things. When you have a spring season, of course, you have your harvest, but you're also going to have illegal take. There's going to be some birds that are taken that are not checked in. And there's also going to be a crippling rate, and that's birds who have been shot, where hunters have attempted to take them, that have gotten away, but have died in the process. And those are generally considered altogether harvest, crippling, and illegal take as spring mortality. So, again, it is in the realm of possibility that we're reaching that overharvest line, but we don't know, because we don't know things such as hunter effort, hunter efficiency, and the 4 things that we went over. But the thing is, and the great thing is that we should know these things. We should have a clue in 2021, because we're doing this wonderful research project. During this research project, these are the things we're going to get out of it. We're going to get survival rates by sex and age. We're going to have poults, juveniles, adults, gobblers, hens. It's great. We're going to get reproduction rates. We're going to get poult recruitment rates. How many poults that hatch make it to as adults. We're going to get a harvest rate that we can have confidence in. We're going to get measures of hunter effort. We're going to get measures of hunter efficiency. We're going to learn about habitat use. We're going to see if we have enough brooding ground to support our poults that are being hatched by our hens. We're going to see if we have nesting ground and see if that's something that's limiting our population. We're going to get a measure of hunter satisfaction, and we're also going to do some disease surveillance, because every single bird that we monitor is going to have blood taken and a fecal sample taken and analyzed. So there's a lot going on with this study. Now, if we just look at these top 5 attributes of this study, these rates, survival rates, reproduction rates, poult recruitment rates, harvest rates, hunter effort, and efficiency, these are all variables in a population model. And a population model is a super complex bunch of mathematical equations. But these rates are inputs for this model. And you crank out this model, and you actually find out what the current harvest impact is, which is just amazing. It's what we need to know. So, I know we wanted to talk about in detail our research project that's going on.